quite a bit. I don't have a tripod yet. I did get me a selfie stick though, so it's working kind of better than it usually did. Now, you're going to take your 1 egg, crack it, put it in your mixing bowl. I'm going to heat that up real good. And you're going to do when you get this egg beat up, you're going to do 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Just a little smidgen of salt. That was the one thing that I did not get when I was getting all my ingredients, was my salt. So you're going to get 1/8 teaspoon of salt, put in this, your mixing bowl. And then you're going to do 3 spoonfuls sugar in this recipe. 3 spoonfuls. I guess for all intents and purposes that would be basically about 3 tablespoons of sugar. And you're going to do 1 teaspoon of vanilla flavoring. Now, for vanilla flavoring, you can use vanilla sugar in this recipe. I just use vanilla flavoring. I like it pretty well. So I'll just use me a teaspoon of that. And mix everything up. Now, I'm going to put roughly 6 ounces of milk, 1/4 cup of oil, and it's going to turn like it's going to be pretty liquidy at this point, but it does have a good consistency. It's looking pretty good, just like the video and everything I watched. And what you're going to do is, with the flour, you're going to use 1/4 cup of flour. You're going to put half of that 1/4 cup in and stir. Then you're going to mix it all up, and then you're going to put the other half in. Now, that is supposed to thicken the consistency up of your recipe. And when that happens, you're going to have what's going to be somewhat similar to a cake batter. And forgive me for stepping out of the camera, but I was still looking for that salt that we talked about a little earlier. That was the only thing I had left, basically, to do with this recipe. So, I found that. It's a little smidgen of salt there. And you'll mix that up. Now, you're going to get 3/4 cup of flour. For this recipe. So you're going to put half of that in now. Stir that up. Now keep in mind, if you ever watch this video online, it's everything on the sizes for the cups and everything are in milliliters or ounces as opposed to cups. And it's in France. A lot of that I think is because of that. You're going to mix this up real good. Then you're going to add the other half of this flour. Mix that up. Oh, before I forget, you're going to put a spoonful of clear vinegar in this. Now, I've never done that, and I've seen that, and I was like, well, let's see how that goes. And you're going to do a spoonful of vinegar, and you're going to put a tablespoon of baking powder. Now, put a tablespoon of baking powder in this. Now, get all that mixed up. Man, it's going to turn like the consistency of cake batter. Stir it up real good. Make sure everything's mixed up. So, when we're doing all that, we're mixing this mix up for our cake. Now, let me remind you, this cake is not going to be cooked in the oven. This cake will be cooked on the stove top at low heat for 20 minutes once you've put the batter in the skillet over top of the apples. So, 20 minutes covered is what it will be. 20 minutes covered. Yeah, looking a little better now. We have everything in there. Make sure that you continuously mix this to get it to the consistency of a cake batter. Because if you don't, you're just going to be pouring a bunch of liquid over the apples and they're not going to cook like they're supposed to. Now make sure also that you have a serving plate ready for this cake, because once it comes off of the stove after 20 minutes of cooking, let it cool 5 minutes uncovered, and then you're going to flip this cake over onto your serving plate, cake plate, whatever you want to call it, and then it will be ready. Now, today's recipe, I'm not going to add any sauce or anything over top of it, any kind of icing. It's just basically made, it was just served right off the skillet. Just to let you know, this is the first time I made this recipe, and instead of a 1/4 cup of flour, you might want to just make that a cup. because when I did a 1/4 cup of flour, I actually did more than what the recipe actually called for initially. It only called for 0.6 and a cup as opposed to 0.75, and I almost went ahead and done 0.75, and come to find out when I did this mix this first time, it was not thick enough. So my recommendations are, you know, you live and you learn with this, especially the first time you ever made a cake like this. Basically, now we have the consistency that I would want in a cake. Now, it looks much more like a cake batter now as opposed to what it looked like a little earlier. It's a little bit too liquidy for me. You can judge your own consistency with this however you want to do it, but that's what I would do, is add a cup as opposed to